There's a world most people never get to see, and it's not on the news, in your school lessons, or in the advice your parents gave you. It's the world where money doesn't just buy things, it silently bends rules, shapes laws, and makes people move without ever knowing who pulled the strings. Most of us are taught that money comes from hard work, saving a little, and maybe retiring someday, if we're lucky. But that story leaves out the darkest part of the game, because to the people who really run things, to those at the top, money isn't income at all. It's leverage, protection, and a way to quietly influence how others live and decide. No one understood this better than Niccolo Machiavelli, the thinker whose ideas about power have quietly guided rulers for centuries. In this video, we're going to take his ruthless view of human nature and wire it directly into the world of modern money. 13 dark lessons that show how cash becomes control, how profit becomes power, and how the game is really played behind the scenes. And once you understand them, you'll never look at money, or the people who have it, the same way again. Lesson 1. Whoever directs the flow decides who holds power. Think of money like water in a desert. The people dying of thirst don't matter nearly as much as the person who owns the well. Most people spend their lives chasing paychecks, running after money, as if it's always just a little bit out of reach. But real power doesn't come from running after money, but from designing the systems that quietly pull it in. They create systems, businesses, platforms, and financial products that make money flow to them automatically, whether it's through fees, interest, subscriptions, or invisible cuts on every transaction. That's why banks, payment processors, and tech giants quietly hold more power than presidents. They decide who gets funded, who gets frozen out, and who gets to grow. Lesson 2. Hide your moves in plain sight. The loudest rich people flashing cars and watches are rarely the ones pulling the real strings. The real power players bury their wealth in holding companies, boring-sounding funds, foundations, and assets nobody pays attention to, so that by the time anyone notices, it's already too late. Machiavelli warned that a ruler should appear ordinary while moving like a predator in the dark, and today's money rulers follow that rule perfectly. Lesson 3. Invest in loyalty before you spend on status. Most people use extra money to upgrade their lifestyle, but dark money uses extra money to upgrade its network. Instead of another car, it buys a lawyer who will fight to the death, a lobbyist who can rewrite a law, a key employee who will never betray, a fixer who cleans up messes before anyone hears about them. Machiavelli said a prince is only as strong as the loyalty around him, and that hasn't changed. Status symbols lose value over time, but loyal people keep paying dividends long after. Lesson 4. Use fear to protect your fortune. Kindness makes people like you, but fear makes them hesitate before they move against you. In the money world, fear doesn't always look like threats. It looks like dependence on a salary, terror of losing healthcare, worry about a lawsuit, dread of being cut off from funding. Corporations don't have to crush every critic. They just have to show they can, and that silent threat protects profits better than any PR campaign. Lesson 5. Diversify like a predator. A lion that only hunts one animal starves when that prey disappears, and a wealthy person who relies on a single income source is just as fragile. Dark money spreads itself across businesses, markets, industries, and even countries, so that if one stream dries up, 5 more still flow. The average person clings to one job, one paycheck, one skill they hope will never go out of style. The Machiavellian investor is always building options and backup plans. Lesson 6. Time favors the one who can wait. Get-rich-quick thinking is how people walk into traps. They chase the fast score and hand their money to someone more patient. The powerful think in years and decades, not days. They buy assets that look boring now but will be priceless later, stand firm when others panic, and quietly accumulate while everyone else is selling in fear. Machiavelli knew that time can defeat enemies without a single battle. In money, time defeats competitors who can't wait. Lesson 7. Make others dependent. True power isn't just being rich, it's being the person or system others cannot live without. Employers who become the main source of jobs in a town, lenders who hold everyone's debts, platforms people need to reach customers. These create a form of voluntary slavery. When your income, reputation, or survival depends on someone, you tolerate things you'd otherwise resist. Dark money doesn't just pile up cash, it designs situations that force people to stay plugged into its system. Lesson 8. Turn enemies into investors. You don't have to make everyone like you if you can make them profit from your success. When rivals hold shares in your company, depend on your platform, or earn fees from your growth, they become chained to your fortunes, whether they like you or not. They can't destroy you without hurting themselves, and that's one of the most Machiavellian money moves of all. Transform potential threats into reluctant guardians by tying their wallets directly to your wins. We've already pulled back the curtain on 8 dark money lessons: how the powerful build the pipes instead of chasing the flow, hide their moves in plain sight, buy unbreakable loyalty instead of shiny toys, use fear as a quiet shield, spread their bets like predators, weaponize patience, trap people in dependence, and even turn enemies into investors. That alone is enough to change how you see every paycheck, every loan, every opportunity you're offered. But Machiavelli would tell you this is only half the game. Power doesn't come from clever tricks, it comes from understanding the end game, how to become rich without being a target, how to be everywhere without being seen, how to build wealth that outlives you. The next 5 lessons go deeper into the shadows, showing how the rulers of money stay invisible, untouchable, and unforgettable long after everyone else has cashed out and disappeared. Lesson 9. Silence is more profitable than bragging, because those with nothing broadcast everything, those with wealth stay quieter, and those with real power erase themselves from the noise. The people posting their wins, flexing their lifestyle, and broadcasting every deal are really advertising their weaknesses and painting targets on their own backs, while the quiet operators move money through boring entities, private agreements, and off-camera decisions that nobody ever sees. And when storms come in the form of lawsuits, regulators, taxes, or enemies, it's the loud ones who get hit first, while the silent remain invisible. Lesson 10. Control the story around your wealth, because in a Machiavellian world, perception is often more powerful than truth. Corporations that pollute, cut jobs, or crush competitors wrap themselves in stories about innovation, community, and changing the world. And that narrative buys them forgiveness, distraction, or even admiration, while rich individuals who give a relatively small amount to charity or build a public image of visionary or philanthropist turn suspicion into applause and hide the sharp edges of how they really operate. Lesson 11. Debt is the most precise tool of control. It looks harmless, wrapped in friendly language like credit, financing, and buy now, pay later. But in reality, it's a slow, quiet chain that keeps governments obedient to lenders, families locked into decades of payments, and entire societies too scared of losing everything to ever rebel. And Machiavelli would recognize the genius in draining people little by little, so they never realize how trapped they are until escape is almost impossible. Lesson 12. Create systems that survive you, not just income that ends with you. Because a big income can make you feel powerful for one lifetime, but structures, trusts, companies, foundations, ownership webs can keep controlling assets, influence, and decisions long after you're dead. The truly Machiavellian thinker isn't just asking how to get rich now, but how to make sure their name, their bloodline, or at least their blueprint still shapes the game 100 years from today. And lesson 13. Know when to disappear. There comes a point where being visible becomes a liability, where your wealth and influence attract too much heat, and the smartest move isn't to grab more spotlight, but to step back. Let your systems and allies run things, and become a ghost, someone whose face the public forgets, but whose decisions still ripple through markets, boardrooms, and governments, perfectly embodying Machiavelli's final truth. The greatest threat comes from the power that operates without ever revealing its face. So, what do these 13 dark money lessons really add up to? Together they form a map of how power is built, hidden, and protected in a world that runs on cash and fear, not fairness and hope. Control the flow, and you control who thrives. Hide your moves, and nobody can stop you. Buy loyalty instead of toys, and you never stand alone. Use fear as an invisible fence. Diversify like a predator so no single loss can kill you. Weaponize patience so time works for you, not against you. Make others dependent so they cling to you. Turn enemies into investors so they're chained to your success. Stay silent while others brag themselves into trouble. Control the story so people defend the image that benefits you. Use debt as a slow, quiet prison. Build dynasties instead of one-hit fortunes, and disappear when visibility becomes dangerous. Each one is a blade on its own, but together they form an arsenal, a complete playbook for turning money into control, not just comfort. And the reason these lessons work so brutally well comes down to something Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Human psychology doesn't change. People chase comfort, which makes them easy to trap with convenience, subscriptions, and security. They fear loss more than they love gain, which makes threats to their job, status, or stability incredibly effective. They crave admiration, which makes them overspend on appearance and ignore substance. They crave safety and belonging, which makes them submit to whoever can offer protection, access, or inclusion in an inner circle. The powerful know this. They don't just move numbers on a screen, they move people's fears, hopes, egos, and addictions. That's why money, at the highest level, isn't really about math, it's about psychology and control. Ignore these lessons, and you end up living inside someone else's system, playing by rules designed to keep you small. Understand them, even a little, and you start to see the hidden hands behind prices, debts, jobs, and opportunities. And the game of money stops looking random and starts looking rigged by design. To really feel how these dark money rules work, you have to see them in motion, not just as ideas but as everyday realities hiding in plain sight. Controlling the flow. Imagine a simple bank account. You put your paycheck in, feeling safe and responsible. But while your balance sits there earning scraps, the bank quietly lends your money out at higher interest to someone buying a house, a business, or a building. And when that borrower pays back with profit, the bank keeps the difference. You took the risk of working. They took the reward of controlling the flow. And if they decide who gets approved and who gets denied, they're not just making money, they're deciding whose dreams get funded and whose die on paper. Hiding in plain sight. While social media drools over influencers with rented cars and designer outfits, someone far more powerful is quietly buying up farmland, warehouses, water rights, data centers, or boring utilities. Nothing flashy, nothing viral, just assets people can't live without, stacked behind holding companies and trusts, so that even if you trace the money, the real owner looks like a ghost. You see a friendly brand name, they see a private cash machine. Buying loyalty instead of luxury. Think of two entrepreneurs who both hit it big. One blows his first millions on a mansion, rare watches and parties everyone talks about for a year, while the other takes the same money and hires a ruthless legal team, an elite accountant, a lobbyist with government access, a PR fixer, and a handful of hungry young talent who know their careers rise or fall with his success. 10 years later, the first guy is downsizing and hoping for a comeback. The second barely appears in public, but his people work day and night to protect and expand what he's already built, because his survival is tied to theirs. Fear as a shield. Inside a giant corporation, most employees don't need to be bullied directly. The fear of losing their job, their visa, their healthcare, or their reputation does the heavy lifting. When someone thinks about speaking up or pushing back, they picture mortgage payments, kids' school fees, or the awkward silence of being blacklisted in their industry, and that quiet fear keeps them obedient in ways no memo ever could, all while the company squeezes more profit with fewer obstacles. Diversifying like a predator. In every new boom, crypto, AI, green energy, real estate bubbles, you see a pattern. Regular people go all in on one thing, convinced it's the ticket out, but the dark money player spreads their bets across a portfolio of winners and losers, early-stage companies, hard assets, and even competitors. Knowing that most will fail, a few will break even, and one or two will explode and pay for the rest. When the bubble pops, the average person is wiped. The Machiavellian investor simply pivots to the next hunt. Patience as a weapon. Picture an older landlord who bought run-down buildings in a rough neighborhood decades ago. Back then, everyone called it a stupid move, but he just quietly collected low rent and waited. Over time, the city changed. Coffee shops appeared, tech offices opened, and suddenly those ugly old buildings sit on prime land, worth 20 or 50 times what he paid. New money rushes in, trying to buy a seat at the table, but he's been sitting there for years, letting time do the dirty work. Making others dependent. Imagine a town where one company provides most of the jobs, sponsors the local sports teams, funds the holiday festivals, and donates to the schools. On the surface, they look generous and community-minded, but underneath, they've made the town addicted to their presence, so when they want a tax break, looser regulations, or silence about their practices, who will dare say no when everyone's livelihood depends on them staying happy? People don't just work for them, they orbit them, turning enemies into investors. In the world of high finance, it's common for rival funds, competitors, or even public critics to quietly own pieces of each other's deals. They might trash talk in interviews, but behind closed doors, their money is locked into the same projects, same indexes, same instruments. If one player falls too hard, the others lose billions. So suddenly, it's in everyone's interest to keep the system afloat, even if they hate each other's guts. They're trapped in a golden web of mutual dependence that makes any real war too expensive to fight. Silence versus noise. Now picture two business owners in the same industry. One is constantly online, bragging about revenue, posting screenshots, shouting about crushing it. The other rarely shares anything, files clean, quiet paperwork, uses private companies, and keeps a low social footprint. When a scandal, a downturn, or a government audit hits the sector, which one do you think gets the spotlight? The journalists, the regulators, the lawsuits? The loud one finds out the price of attention, while the quiet one keeps operating in the background, unbothered, because nobody thought to look there. Controlling the story. A corporation spends 1 million polluting a river and 2 million running feel-good campaigns about sustainability, sponsoring beach cleanups, and posting videos of smiling children planting trees. The reality is ugly, but the narrative is beautiful, and many people believe the story they see more than the facts they never investigate, even defending the company when someone criticizes it because it seems so positive. That's not an accident. That's purchased perception. Debt as a hidden prison. A young family buys a house with almost no down payment, finances furniture, puts emergencies on credit cards, and leases a car. Each decision seems reasonable in the moment, but the end result is a chain of monthly payments that eats their freedom. Now, they can't risk changing careers, starting a business, or speaking up at work, because they're always one missed paycheck away from disaster, and somewhere a lender is quietly getting their cut every month without breaking a sweat. Dynasties instead of one-hit fortunes. Look at families that seem to always be rich. It's not because each generation is a financial genius. It's because someone long ago set up structures, trusts, holding companies, ownership in key industries that automatically pass control and benefit down the line. Even if one heir is lazy or foolish, the system cushions their mistakes and keeps the engine running, and over time, their name becomes a kind of brand that opens doors on its own. The money isn't just big, it's rooted, disappearing into power. Finally, think of wealthy figures who suddenly step out of the spotlight, retreat into private foundations, family offices, or quiet ownership positions. To the public, it looks like they retired or faded away, but in reality, they've just moved behind the curtain, where they can fund politicians, steer boards, and push markets with far less scrutiny. By the time a decision reaches your life, through a new law, a price change, a company policy, the person who benefited from it most is someone you'll never see on a screen or in a headline. Once you start noticing these patterns, the world looks different. You stop seeing random money moves and start seeing strategies, not just for getting rich, but for staying invisible, unavoidable, and in control. Underneath all these strategies runs an even darker current. The psychology that makes them work, the way money is used not just to move numbers, but to move people. Machiavelli understood that humans crave one thing as much as safety or comfort: the feeling of being chosen, of being part of an inner circle, and dark money weaponizes that desire all the time. A powerful person doesn't just offer you a deal, they offer you access. I only share this with a few people, and suddenly you're not just taking an investment, you're accepting a place in their world. You feel special, seen, elevated above the crowd, but the moment you step through that door, you're playing by their rules, inside their system, where they decide the terms and the exits. For most people, money is a cushion, a way to feel safe against chaos. But for the truly Machiavellian, money is a weapon and a lever. They use it to push competitors out of markets, to buy influence in key places, to silence potential threats before those threats even realize they had a voice. And when a rival looks strong, they don't hope it works out. They deploy capital like artillery, locking up suppliers, outbidding them on critical assets, funding alternatives that split their customer base, or dangling irresistible buyouts that swallow threats before they grow teeth. And every move is double-layered, because in this world, profit and influence are never separate goals. Buying shares in a company is a way to get voting power in the boardroom. Donating to a cause is a way to get invited into rooms where decisions are made. Funding a media outlet or sponsoring content is a way to shape the story entire populations hear every day. The money comes back, but so does a quieter, more lasting reward. Access, leverage, a say in what happens next. The same logic applies to dependency. Dark money players don't just want customers or followers, they want people who can't imagine life without them. Whether it's a group of executives who owe their careers, a cluster of businesses that rely on one anchor client, or a local elite that depends on a single patron for donations, connections, and projects. When you feed people consistently, their survival instinct binds them to you, and they'll often defend you more fiercely than you defend yourself, because your fall would drag them down too. This is how a Machiavellian ruler avoids open hatred. Not by being nice, but by making sure enough people's rent, status, and security hang on their continued success. Resentment might exist in private, but public opposition stays weak because too many people are tied to the same money tree. And behind all of this is the final trick, hiding the hand that moves the pieces. The most dangerous players rarely put their own name on anything. They use layers of shell companies, proxies of proxies, friendly faces who front the brand, middlemen who take the heat, and legal structures so complex that even if someone knows something is wrong, they can't easily prove who's responsible. Laws get proposed and passed that just happen to benefit a specific set of businesses. Media narratives shift in ways that conveniently support one side of an industry. Enforcement falls hard on some players and mysteriously soft on others. And to most people it looks like the market or public opinion, when in reality it's money, quietly steering from the shadows. That's why this kind of power feels supernatural when you first notice it. Not because it's magic, but because it's invisible by design, built around human weakness, ego, fear, and the hunger to belong, exactly the vulnerabilities Machiavelli spent his life studying, now amplified through the modern machinery of money. So, what does all of this leave you with? Just a scary story about the rich, or something sharper, something you can actually use? These 13 dark money lessons strip away the fairy tale that the world runs on fairness, hard work, and doing the right thing, and show you the machinery underneath. Money as a weapon, a shield, a net, and a script for controlling how other people live, think, and move. For most people, money will always just be a paycheck, a bill, a worry at 3 a.m., because they were never taught to see beyond survival into strategy. But once you understand how the powerful control the flow, hide their moves, buy loyalty, rule with quiet fear, hunt like predators, let time fight for them, build dependence, chain enemies to their profits, stay silent, control the story, weaponize debt, think in dynasties, and vanish into the shadows, you can't unsee it. You'll start to notice the subtle pressure behind every great offer, the invisible strings behind every neutral decision, the way comfort, fear, and ego are used to keep you playing small. That doesn't mean you have to become ruthless or turn into some cartoon villain. It means you stop being naive, you stop assuming the game is fair. You start asking, who benefits most if I say yes? Who built this system, and what do they want from me? Maybe you'll use these lessons simply to protect yourself, to avoid bad debt, dependency, fake opportunities, and traps that drain your life away. Maybe you'll go further and start quietly building your own systems, your own flow, your own circles of loyalty and influence. Either way, Machiavelli's message is the same. Those who ignore power are ruled by it. The game of money is rigged, and always has been. Your only real choice now is whether you go on playing blind or start playing smart.